Well, good morning. Today is Wednesday the 17th. I wanted to kind of just regroup after the week. I hope you're all doing well. Um, let's kind of just begin to talk about where we are in Plant. Um, we had our couple of exercises, and it was very interesting because it was a distinction between utilitarianism and absolute morals. And we might have touched on this in the last video, but when you look at utilitarianism, as some of you may have noted or read in particular, it's what's best for the group overall, right? In general. But that is democracy. But as Plato and others wrote, democracy can lead to mob rule. So you don't want mob rule because you could have a minority of people with the larger voices or amplified through, intermediaries such as politicians, media, business, religion, and they get pretty much their way, right? Or you could have a majority of people that really represent the democracy and meaning the overall opinion of what is best for everyone. And I was talking to a young black man once about this, and he was talking to me. We were over at the home I actually had an art unveiling. I'm into art, a little bit of art. And we were talking, and he made a comment that he thought our form of government, not the government, was racist. And I said, well, let me explain something to you. I said, and because his presupposition was that the House of Representatives didn't get their way, basically questioning the bicameral form of government that many Anglo-Saxon governments and now even Asian countries, I'm sure, have adopted. You have two houses, and then you have the center, which is the capital, right, where they come together. And I explained to him, I said, listen, I said, there's a bicameral approach to government because of the mob rule situation. And I said, if the majority of people get their way, it tramples on the rights of the minority, and that's where the Senate comes in. The Senate is supposed to be the guardians of the minority. So the balance is supposed to be almost like your brain. You got to be a critical thinker. You got to balance both sides and come up with a fair resolution. So when I explained this to him, he put it together, and he was like, wow, 200-300 years ago, blacks were considered slaves. And that was the popular opinion. That was the democratic opinion. And it would be up to the Senate then to keep that in check, right? So kind of think about utilitarianism without constraints. I would call it mob rule. Absolute morals now. In Plan Exercise 1.4, you're so dogmatic in your approach. There's no room for error, tolerance, maybe, from your view, that is. So again, we look at balance, right? Everything about life is balance. Very little should be, fanaticism, right? So the other thing about utilitarianism, think about this. What makes a 20-year-old happy? Trust me. Or an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, is not what makes a 40 or 50-year-old happy. So when you have young people taking a view, it's legitimate, because many of you are young, right? But understand, my dear friends, what you think is good for you today might not be good for you tomorrow. So you always have to have that open mind um, to judge your views in a broader context. And I think that's kind of where Plante is going, right? Ultimately, he wants you to do the right thing, the title of his book. Um, so, with that being said, I wanted to kind of also discuss with you this morning um, Module 3. We're moving into Module 3. I want you to think about the Interfaith Declaration, which I uncovered, and what the shared moral foundations are among what they claim to be three of the world's most popular or um, most prestigious, whatever you want to say, religions. I have been reading some of the Buddhist writings from a group called the Falun Gong. They are a prosecuted Chinese sect in China, and they're actually persecuted here by the Chinese Communist Party. And it's very interesting that when I read the Buddhist Taoist writings and assessment of what's going on, there is so much similarity to what I believe the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians also view. It's metaphysical, maybe in a way, it's spiritual. It talks about the battle of good and evil, and the similarities are astounding to me. So think about this when you read Module 3. We'll go through the readings of Module 3. How people can come together. Even though they have different religious or philosophical viewpoints, they can come together. We can come together. No matter what the politicians want you to think or the media, we need to be a united people. And how do we do that? By open dialogue, open debate, open minds. And so consider that when you read the Interfaith Declaration and how you can apply this in business, in your own business or capacity as an accountant. This week I read in the New York Post, you should look it up, the New York State Attorney General, I believe indicted or may have convicted, actually, an accountant who worked for the state of New York to collect taxes, but he was wined and dined. I assume it was a man. I think it was. They didn't mention him by name, or the person by name, but I'm assuming it's a man because the companies that were trying to avoid paying New York sales taxes, use taxes, whatever taxes they were, they took them to strip clubs. They plied them with alcohol. I mean, this guy was kind of a lowlife. But you know what? There are many of them. And some of you may stoop to be a lowlife. You don't think so. We all have a price. This guy he sold himself cheap. So when you think about ethics in business, think about this. What's your price? What would you do to sell out? We all have a price. Don't say you don't. You do. And I'll challenge you. If you tell me you don't, email me. Say, hey, professor, I don't have a price. Because I will challenge you. You do have a price. I have a price as well. I have a price where I would sell out. Okay? And it might not just be in economic terms. We get into the divine command theory within Boss. And, one of the critiques here is, is something good because God commands it to be good? Or is something good because it is good and God commands it because it is good? Case in point, hijackers on 9/11 2001 believed that it was a good thing to take down the Twin Towers. They felt it was good. Maybe they felt that's because you know, um, it was a good thing to do. God must want us to do it. Um, you know, did God command them to? It's in their own head, whatever they thought, right? Um, you think about the Ten Commandments. One of you wrote, actually, um, very eloquently, that you might not be a religious or spiritual person, but you look at the Ten Commandments and you say, hey, I'm good with these. These are good moral guidelines. And they are. They're almost the basis of civilization, if you think about it. So read the divine command theory and understand the importance of religion, whether it's in your personal life or within government, how it should influence. The separation of church and state, in my opinion, has gotten so distorted. Um, we are not supposed to be a religious government, but that doesn't mean we cannot have religious principles and morals undergirding the government, which is certainly the historical context and construct of everything that we basically do, um, from the Constitution to the Declaration of Independence, that our rights do not come from government, they come from God, and they're inalienable, and that everything the government does should be in support of those rights, unlike many other countries. Okay? From there, you're going to be going into moral development, your conscience, your moral development. You're going to read about Kohlberg, his 6 stages, I believe, of moral development, how we go from infancy, childhood, you know, um, kind of just reacting to doing good because we might get slapped or spanked, to really understanding why we're doing good and why it's a good thing. Then you go into, you'll see Gilligan, I think her name was Carol Gilligan, will talk about how a woman's moral development is kind of framed. Similar to Kohlberg, she reaches a nice conclusion about balancing self-interest, right? Your maybe absolute morality viewpoint, your egoist viewpoint, and utilitarianism or universalism, which is another theory. She says you got to reach a balance between what's best for you and what's best for maybe the others. You know, true heroes, whether they're in combat or in an emergency room or a pedestrian helping someone as a good Samaritan, when they put their lives out there to risk for someone else, not only is that a beautiful act of love, even though there are no feelings involved, but it's a beautiful act of love, that they're putting more value on what is best for the other person as opposed to what's best for me. Those are kind of examples of a hero. So I think then you will also read in Plante about moral courage. I want you to focus on moral courage on your paper 1. Now, let me just take a minute here. You won't believe this, but I get Google Analytics on the videos I put out. Only roughly half of you are watching the videos, and that's fine. The other half will do what they're going to do. So for those of you that are watching the videos, you're receiving prompts or guidance from me. That's of course included online. So you're not getting more. You're just getting it amplified or delivered in a different way. In paper 1, which is due October 1st, you should be writing it now. Starting to write it now. Focus on courage. I want to know about courage. Do you have ethical muscle or not? Some of you do. Some of you have used it. You may have gotten slapped on the wrist and hurt and made you tougher, like it did to me over the years. Or because you didn't want to get slapped down, you haven't exercised it. Or maybe you're in your early 20s and you really haven't had a real dilemma to deal with, and you're going to have to grow into your ethical muscle. But I want you to kind of explore that in paper one. Courage. So I want to be looking for courage, okay? And believe me, that's associated with points, of course, okay? So that being said, the last thing I want to cover, I think, yes, it is the last thing, is your midterm exam. There are 7 areas I need for you to focus on in the textbooks that have been assigned. First thing is, I want you to think about ethical reasoning and its relation to opinion. Okay? I might have an opinion about something, but does that necessarily mean it's a well-informed opinion? Is it based on evidentiary matter? Or is it based on my gut feeling? Is it based on ethics in general? Or am I just going by, let's say, my flesh, what I want, right? The second area I want you to look at is, what do we mean by true disclosure or just disclosure of information, okay? And of course, this is in the context of financial reporting. So think about true disclosure. What does it mean? How much do we give the user? How much does the user expect, right? The third is, be familiar with the Interfaith Declaration, okay? Divine Command, be familiar with Divine Command as well. What does it say? Pros and cons of it. I want you to think about moral development and its different stages, but I want you to think about it also in context to your own personal experience. How did you develop morally or immorally? Might be the case too, okay? I want you to think about the last 2 topics, integrity and competence. These will tie into, actually, or paper 1, you'll be addressing these, I hope, in paper 1, integrity and competence, along with courage. So for your midterm, be prepared to address. These are actually 7 areas, okay? So with that being said, we're on a journey. I'll be taking 3 weeks, not off from school necessarily, but I'll be in Italy for 3 weeks towards the end of October, early November, or towards mid-November. I'm bringing the laptop. Internet should work, but if things don't work, just chill out. We'll get everything fixed, okay? So that's the only big thing about me that you're going to need to know right now. I'm just going to visit a bit. But other than that, I'm going to bid you farewell. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me, okay? So thank you again. Be good.